What's up, Rise or Fall? Welcome to the Buy or Sell podcast. We're going to be diving into all sorts of players and whether we think we should be buying them up in fantasy or selling them. I'm joined today by Nolan Ventry, a data analyst and fantasy football savant for nearly 2 decades. What's up, Nolan?
Not much, Mitch. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Let's dive in. One of the players we were talking about this past week was an absolutely polarizing figure in the fantasy football world, both in season-long and DFS. Twitter, social media, podcasts, YouTube, everything and everywhere was talking about this one player. And I know you had a few hot takes you wanted to discuss today. I'm going to give you the floor. You could go ahead and begin about this player who you all know without me even saying his name. Nolan, take it away.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, obviously, I mean, if you're in the fantasy space season long, DFS as well, one of the guys you're going to want to talk about today is Taysom Hill. And so if you're in season long leagues, you know that this was a hot topic in your league. More than likely, someone in your league discovered that he was TE eligible if you're in an ESPN league and picked this player up. And a lot of people in your league probably did not even notice. This happened to me specifically in a league that I'm in. And you just got to tip your hat to the guys that realized that and made that pickup. Also have to tip your hat to ESPN because we know now heading into this week that they're removing that TE eligibility. So looking back at the production from this week, Taysom Hill had a great game playing strictly as a quarterback. It was pretty amazing. He had 18 for 23. He went 233 yards, 1 interception, 10 carries for 51 yards and 2 TDs. That rushing floor and that rushing production, I think, is what you're going to be able to expect going forward on Taysom Hill, and that's what's going to keep him so attractive in your matchups. The schedule is definitely going to be something to consider. He's got some good matchups coming up. He's got KC in Week 15 and Minnesota in Week 16. So KC, tough defensively, but that's going to be a high-scoring game, so you're going to have to assume that he's going to put up some points in that one. Minnesota in Week 16, you know, he might be able to do anything he wants in that matchup. So I'm buying Taysom Hill going forward. I think he's a QB2 in some of these good matchups, and I think he's a fringe QB1 in some of these matchups, and he's a QB2 probably rest of the way, depending on who he's playing.
I like that. So are you buying? You're buying Taysom Hill?
I'm buying Taysom Hill, yeah.
All right. This is the beauty of this type of podcast. I'm absolutely selling Taysom Hill, and I'm going to tell you a few reasons here real quick. Number one, I wanted to show my teamriseorfall.com study hub. We have these DraftKings FanDuel projections. DraftKings basically you can use for your PPR leagues. FanDuel you could apply to your half-point PPR leagues. We're going to have a full season-long study hub, which we are working on. You can see it right now on the screen as I'm showing the red zone stats and all sorts of things for the running back position. This is totally free right now if you want to check it out at teamriseorfall.com. Hover over the NFL tab. Go to the NFL season-long study hub. This is totally free. We just want the community to have it. We think it's a glorious way to spend your time researching all things fantasy football, and we want people to be able to look at things like game flow and everything like that. So what I did is I went back through this when I was looking through our projections, and oh my goodness, we had Taysom Hill exploding in our Team Rise or Fall DFS projections. Now, that worked out great, right? I mean, you were able to plug him in at tight end on FanDuel, on DraftKings. You had to play him at quarterback at 4.8K. It worked out phenomenally. It was a great week for our projections. Now, going forward, though, the reason why I'm selling is the fact that his price tag has now been elevated on both DraftKings and FanDuel. They have moved him to quarterback on both sites. On top of that, for your fantasy football players, I have a few stats I dove into where I really wanted to see what the numbers were going to tell me behind the final production. And I looked at it, and I saw 4 of 5 on intermediate throws. Intermediate throws are between 10 and 19 yards, okay? He did pretty well through there. Very much like a Drew Brees-esque type game. He did great. He was precise in between 10 to 19 yards and accurate at the short throws. He went with 16. He had 16 throws under 10 yards that game, and part of that is because of those 2 deep throws. We saw him throw 2 deep passes that game, and they were both pretty much lame ducks, I kid you not. I get it. One of them, he was under pressure, but still, often I want to see if somebody's missing deep, I want to see them overthrowing their wide receiver, that they have the arm strength to do so if they need to. And what I'm worried about going forward is the fact that, you know, Sean Payton and that offense decided to only let him throw the ball 23 times, and on the 2 deep passes, he could not get the ball down the field. I think truly he looked like a more athletic version of a washed-up Drew Brees, somebody who had to keep the ball inside the 20-yard mark, had to keep the ball short, and if he went deep, the ball just floated, and that's what we've seen out of Drew Brees for the last year or so. My concern going forward is that he's not going to get the passing attempts. And as the defense starts to inch closer to the line of scrimmage, load up the box, make him try to beat them deep, he's going to be uncovered. And in which case, things are going to be bad for this entire offense. I think the only person really that might be able to stay afloat offensively going forward, I'm talking 2-3 weeks down the road in the fantasy playoffs, is likely going to be someone like Alvin Kamara, where he doesn't need to be targeted deep. Michael Thomas had 51.2% of all targets this past week, had 12 targets out of those 23 attempts. I think over the next couple of weeks, you still have very high floor ceiling combination in Michael Thomas, but I would be trying to sell the entire offense right now. And I know that's a hot take, but I'm right there. I think Kamara, I think Thomas, I think Taysom Hill, I think all of them off the back of a good game need to be sold. If you still are able to do trades this late in the season, get rid of them. In dynasty leagues, very similar. I think the only person that might be able to stay dynasty relevant, in my opinion, would be someone like Michael Thomas, where we see receivers from year to year keep fantasy relevance in dynasty leagues. Even Alvin Kamara, as we've seen him in the league for 4 or 5 years now, kind of reaching that point where I'm trying to move him in dynasty leagues as well. I know that we have completely conflicting opinions on a hot topic right now, and that's the beauty of all things co-hosting a show. So good luck to you, Nolan. Let's see here. We're going to slide over to Robbie Anderson. My man, I'm going to let you lead real quick, and then I'm going to absolutely squash your take with mine right after.
I love that, and good luck. So I'm actually selling Robbie Anderson. I have a feeling you're selling him as well, just a gut instinct from knowing you as many years as I have. But here's what I want to tell you about Robbie Anderson, okay? He has a 27% target share through 11 weeks. Really, really good. But he has just 1 touchdown. That's not something you like to see. Robbie Anderson going into the first 6 games of this season appeared like he was the guy. You saw DJ Moore kind of take a back seat, and we liked what we were seeing from Robbie Anderson. I think he was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver for a couple of weeks there. Now you're seeing DJ Moore come on hot. DJ Moore, last 2 weeks, I think he has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. And Robbie Anderson continues to get, a handful of targets, maybe 5, 6, low yardage output, and no touchdowns. So I'm not liking what I'm seeing from him there. We got McCaffrey possibly coming back in week 14. I don't think that's going to help his target share at all. He does have a good matchup in week 12 against the Vikings, but after that, the schedule is absolutely brutal. He's got a bye in week 13. That's not going to help you. Week 14, he's got Denver. Week 15, he's got Green Bay. Week 16, he's got Washington. So I like Robbie Anderson as a wide receiver 3 going forward, but overall, I'm selling him. We're not getting what we used to get from him in the first half of the year, and things are not trending in his favor going forward, Mitch.
Oh, Nolan, you just went right up inside my head, took all my thoughts, and spewed them out your mouth, man. That was perfect. I'm selling Robbie Anderson, too. We haven't seen him score a touchdown since week 1. What a disaster. His last 100-yard receiving game was all the way back in week 5 against the defenseless secondary of the Atlanta Falcons. And here's the thing. He's garnering a ton of looks every game still. I mean, he's being peppered. He's had 8 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games, but he's doing nothing with them. It's absolutely brutal for all things fantasy right now. And on top of that, you nailed it. DJ Moore's coming on right now. He's had 4 touchdowns the last 7 games. And on top of that, he's had 93 or more receiving yards in 5 of those 7 games. He's literally becoming the primary target in this passing offense. And I actually think Robbie Anderson, while he is getting the most targets, is starting to take a backseat to Curtis Samuel as they're trying to find ways to get that electric football player the ball. And he has done great with it. He has scored 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. The quote-unquote number 3 wide receiver, Curtis Samuel, has 5 touchdowns the last 5 games. That's wild. And he's even had a 100-yard receiving effort. So I'm right there with you. Robbie Anderson, I'm selling. If you even have any value left in him right now, point to all those targets, point to, upcoming matchups, and try to get rid of him. You got to move him as fast as you can. If he has a huge week here in Dynasty or something like that, and somebody likes to pull the trigger in Dynasty leagues, pull it. You should pull it too, because Robbie Anderson does not hold long-term value for you. He's also a little bit later in his career, late 20s. You've got some younger wide receivers than DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel who look better and likely will be the primary 2 going forward for years to come, as long as they keep them around. We're going to slide over to a polarizing figure, probably one of the most polarizing figures in the NFL over the last 4, maybe 5 years, and that's Antonio Brown. And I'm actually incredibly intrigued to hear from you of what you have to say about AB, because I have a strong take on him too.
Sure, Mitch. And I think with AB, if you're an AB owner currently, You are sleeping with one eye open because we know in the past Antonio Brown has had some he's had some personality issues. He's been issues in the locker room. He's brought those to the locker room rather, and you just never know with this guy whether he's going to slip up and do something that's going to get him axed from the team. I mean, the head coach even said this week that the second he's not a model citizen, we're moving on from Antonio Brown. And so, does hearing that make it a safe situation for Antonio Brown now that he's been reminded? I certainly don't think so. But performance-wise, I do like what I'm seeing. In Week 9, he had 3 catches for 31 yards. In Week 10, he had 7 catches for 69 yards. And in Week 11, he had 8 for 57. And I believe he had 13 targets as well. So his market share, target-wise, catch-wise, and yardage-wise, is going up every single week. In fact, he led the Bucs in targets, catches, and yards in Week 11. So we know Tom Brady trusts him. We know he's a high leverage guy. He's being used right the way you want him to be used, really, on this offense. And I think with his schedule coming up, you're going to see those catches and that yardage turn into more touchdowns. You've got Week 12 against KC. That's going to be a high-scoring affair. You know he's going to be involved heavily there. Week 13 is a bye, but Week 14, you've got Minnesota. Week 15 against Atlanta. These are two teams bottom 5 against wide receivers in the fantasy playoffs. So I think if you can buy Antonio Brown right now, you're buying him. I think if you already have him on your roster, you're holding on to him. You're going to watch that production continue to increase, and then in the fantasy playoffs, you may be able to deploy him and get some nice score totals there. So I like him as a wide receiver 3 with upside going ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. Wide receiver 3 with upside, absolutely in play. He's garnering enough targets, has enough market share, around 20% right now. My issue is I don't know what type of upside we really have. Maybe wide receiver 2. It's like wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. Okay, that's fine. That's also Robbie Anderson from week to week. And I think that if you can flip someone like Antonio Brown with Robbie Anderson, or if you happen to have those guys on the same team, like move them, point to pass production, point to potential upside, and try to get somebody a little bit more useful. My issue mostly with Antonio Brown is not his individual talent. It's noodle arm Tom Brady. We are legitimately watching one of the greatest football players in the history of mankind turn to dust right before our eyes. He's really having trouble out there. He's having trouble getting the ball down the field. And this has been something we've seen for the last couple of years. And now he has this bevy of, upside type offensive weapons all around him, and he cannot do much with it. And it's a week-to-week thing, and I think that those weapons can carry him, but he's no longer carrying them. And I think that while Antonio Brown might be able to turn those 13 targets into significant production some days, we are not seeing him get the ball down the field. We haven't seen any of them get down the field. And when you're looking at each of their stats week to week, Evans, Godwin, and Antonio Brown, literally none of them are doing anything with their numbers other than Mike Evans, who has a lot of touchdown equity. He has 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games, but he's not top 77 yards receiving. And part of this has to do with the fact that they're all eating from each other, right? Like they're all taking away each other's ceiling to some extent because no one wide receiver is garnering all the love from Tom Brady. I think Chris Godwin likely has the most consistent floor and ceiling combination because I think he's the best talent out of the bunch. But Antonio Brown, we've yet to see get targeted inside the 20, and he is not getting down the field. He has 69, 57 yards receiving in those last 2 games. I'm selling Antonio Brown long-term. I'm selling him this season, and I think that wide receiver 3 with upside is no more than anybody or than somebody like Robbie Anderson, whom I already wanted to sell as well. Moving on, there's another player that I think actually surprisingly might even be more valuable. Nelson Agholor. Nelson freaking Agholor might have more value than Antonio Brown. And on top of that, I'm going to say this before I give it to you. I'm selling him. I think he might have more value than Antonio Brown, and I'm also selling him. Take it away, Nolan. Tell me why I'm a dummy.
Thanks, Mitch. You're definitely not a dummy. I'm selling Aguilar too. I think the thing is between Antonio Brown and Aguilar, I actually like Antonio Brown's floor much better because of the amount of targets that have been trending upwards, the trust of Tom Brady, just his role in the offense, coming out of the slot and seeing a lot of the corners that he's facing. I do like Antonio Brown as a safe floor guy. I like Aguilar's ceiling better. His ADOT is pretty high. He's got an 18-yard ADOT. This week, he caught 6 passes for 88 yards and a TD against the Chiefs in Week 11. The Chiefs are the 4th stingiest defense against fantasy wide receivers, so it's good to see him do well in a big-time situation like that. But we still know that the Raiders' offense is a low passing volume offense. So he has to be extremely efficient with his targets in order to put up the production you need from a fantasy wide receiver. And he's had a couple of weeks where he's done that. If you look at his production, it's actually almost an every other week type of deal where he'll get you a touchdown and 60 yards, but then the next week he'll literally get you a zero. He literally has 2 zeros. And nothing makes me more nauseous than a zero from a starter. And so I think he makes me so nauseous to the point where I might need like an IV of Pepto or something on Sundays if he's in my lineup. I really don't like it. He does appear to be one of Carr's favorite targets outside of Darren Waller. You saw him go to Aguilar in a lot of key situations, but the bottom line is that he's just not involved enough, and he's not as reliable enough as you'd like for a starter. So he might give you some wide receiver 3 weeks, but overall, I think he's more of a wide receiver 5.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where I think my DFS is showing, right? Where I am primarily focused on DFS over season long while I'm preparing content for all of my DFS following. And when I look at someone like Aguilar, I love his week-to-week upside more than someone like Antonio Brown. I don't think Antonio Brown's going to be a red zone target over Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Ronald Jones, Cameron Brate. I think all these guys score touchdowns before Antonio Brown does. So unless Antonio Brown's catching 10 for 120, I still think that on any given week, Nelson Aguilar has a higher upside, and that's due to his touchdown equity. He leads the team in red zone targets at the wide receiver position, albeit I think after last night it's only 5 total, so it's not like it's something significant. He's also in a historic touchdown rate race right now, pace, as he has 5 touchdowns and 33 targets this year. I mean, that's something stupid. We see around 15 to 16 target average from the top wide receivers in the NFL per touchdown. That means you're looking at like 0.8 or so touchdowns per game, and you're looking at somebody who's garnering somewhere between 15 to 16 targets over the course of a 16-game season. We're talking like the best 3 or 4. Think of someone like Davante Adams, right? Nelson Aguilar is certainly not 3 times better at scoring touchdowns than Davante Adams, and that's what his numbers are showing. But the thing is, for all things DFS and looking at week to week, I want Nelson Aguilar for his upside over someone like Antonio Brown, truly, and I know that's bizarre to say, because I think that actually right now, Nelson Aguilar has a better upside, and we're looking at this next upcoming week. The Las Vegas, who was I just looking at? The Vegas plays, is it Atlanta? Is that the correct matchup this week? Yes, they play Atlanta. And Aguilar on DK, or on FanDuel, is 5.2K, and he's 4.9K on DraftKings, and this is where my DFS is showing, my friend, because he's cheap. He's facing a defense giving up over 310 yards passing per game, and they're the second worst team in the NFL against opposing wide receivers. I think that Aguilar has value this week over Antonio Brown, even though AB is against KC, and I would gladly take Nelson Aguilar at his DFS price point over Antonio Brown's, which is still in the mid 6K. So I think your take was much better for season-long leagues, and anybody who came here for fantasy football, take Nolan's word. Anybody here who came here for some DFS stakes, I'm your man. It's Nelson Aguilar week, baby. There we go, man. Conflicting takes again.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing, he says. Well, let's see what happens here with the last guy, Todd Gurley. I'm going to give you the floor, and I'm actually really intrigued here. I had mixed emotions on this one for both season long and DFS. I'm going to focus on DFS again. I'll let you take the fantasy side.
Sounds good, Mitch. And I'm really excited to talk about this one because we saw how Todd Gurley started his career, just shot out of the gates, out of the cannon, basically, and he looked so good. At this point in his career, I think we're starting to see him break down a little bit. He continues to fall into the end zone every week or every other week, which I think is buoying his fantasy production. But overall, he's not been very productive with the carries that he had. I think his yards per carry is 3.7. There are times where he'll come up from a run and he'll limp, or he'll run immediately to the sideline. And unless he's really thirsty, that doesn't give me a good feeling to see that. I'm starting to feel like his lower body, maybe from the waist down, is just completely bone on bone. I can't confirm that. But, he's getting...
Every carry is a true grind.
Carries. Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's moaning through each one as he's running. But week 8 was 18 carries for 46 yards and a TD. Week 9 was 19 carries for 53 yards and a TD. Week 10, he had a bye. Week 11 was 8 carries for 26 yards. So you're seeing a high volume sometimes, but you're not seeing high yardage output. He's catching 1 or 2 balls a game for basically 1 or 2 yards. So there's really no value there. And this week, really concerning, Mitch, Brian Hill played more snaps than him by a margin of 26 to 23. So I'm not liking that. Between the limping and the moaning and the 26 to 23 snap share, I'm not too keen on that. The schedule going forward has a great matchup for him in Week 12 and Week 14 against the Raiders and the Chargers, but then he's got brutal matchups against the Saints and the Bucs in Weeks 13 and 15. So for me, he's still a running back too, but he's a terrifying running back too. Not somebody I feel really comfortable with, and he has a really low floor if he doesn't score. And this is in a season long, by the way.
Yeah, I think that also applies to DFS as well. Truly, he's very touchdown dependent right now. He used to be a guy we could rely on to be a pass catcher, but they're not using him like that this year. And if he's not going to be used as a pass catcher to raise that floor ceiling combination, I want nothing to do with him. And it's been a few weeks since we've targeted him in DFS, and I will continue to not do so, even if he does get a red zone touchdown or so, or two along the way here. Well, he is top 5 in red zone carries inside the 20, inside the 10, and inside the 5. He's also top 3 in touchdowns in each of those distances. That's literally all his value is. And if Atlanta does not give him the rock as much as they were in the beginning of the year, and they're starting to give the ball to Brian Hill a little bit, that also concerns me for DFS upside. If you're now saying he's not going to get all his carries, all his touches, or all his opportunities, what kind of value does he have? Now you're saying he's a 10 carry guy and you're hoping he falls into the end zone. There's guys like that all over the NFL, and you can have them at a cheaper price point in DFS. And I would imagine in fantasy leagues, the name value and his season-long total stats might be something that you could spin, package together with some of these other players we've mentioned, truly, Robbie Anderson, AB, and put them together and try to go get someone like James Robinson for a little bit higher upside week to week. I don't mind packaging 2-3 guys and trying to turn it into, 2-3 tier 3 guys or wide receiver 3s or RB3s. Try to turn multiple of those into some RB2 or wide receiver 2 that has a higher week-to-week upside that could win you your week. Target those owners that, have no depth and need some more bodies because of injuries. I'd certainly be trying to move basically all of these players we talked about today. And I literally sold all 5. I sold all 5 in both DFS and fantasy football, in my opinion. They're just, too volatile, and their production is fool's gold to me. any input there, Nolan?
That's a good question. I mean, well, we know that we disagree. And look, in these situations where I say I'm buying, I'm not buying as like a fantasy saving player or a guy that's going to win you the playoffs. I think, and in Taysom Hill, I'm buying him as a QB2, matchup based QB1 for season long. I think that with Antonio Brown, he's a really safe guy. You can start as a wide receiver 3, giving his target total and his role in the offense. And maybe, with the matchups coming up, maybe he'll score a few TDs too. So I'm buying him as a wide receiver 3, not as a season-long savior. So, but I do agree with you. I think a lot of these guys, that there is some risk that comes with all of them, and certainly the season-long versus DFS has different reasons for starting different players. So
yeah,
man, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, though, Mitch.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It was fun. I like being a little bit more off the cuff, and I will say that your Taysom Hill quarterback 1 take, that is an interesting one for me because there are so many quarterbacks. There's just so many. I mean, we're talking about like you're putting him at the back end of one. You're with Tom Brady, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan. These types of players are back there, and I do think that in any given week, Taysom Hill potentially has a higher upside due to his red zone touchdown equity, his rushing touchdown equity. But listen, if he's not throwing the ball, if we don't see him throw the ball more than 23 times against Denver this week, and I get it, Denver's a good defense. This is a good matchup to kind of test his type of floor and ceiling combo. I think that Denver probably is going to be a little bit more prepared with a good film on him now, as we've seen him, take, 34 total dropbacks this week. So I think that this week will be a good indicator on his, not only his week-to-week upside and floor, but maybe even a long-term look. My issue long-term, though, is he's just old, man. He's just old. You think, this is like a 26-year-old man getting his first start or, his first opportunity, but I'm pretty sure he's like 31 years old. I think he turned 31 this season, and it's just a weird thing for the Saints to be tossing him out there over Jameis Winston, in my opinion. I get that they want to see what they have in him, but what does it matter? Are you going to make this guy your future at 32 going into 2021? I don't know. I'm not there. It's bizarre to me. I'm glad we talked about him, and I'm not going to, beat a dead horse here. I know I've already said many times that I don't believe in Taysom Hill, but here we are. And I'm saying it again. I can't help myself. Good job today, Nolan. I appreciate you, man. This was a fun second podcast together. And listen, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And I hope everybody out there catches this before Thanksgiving. Enjoy some turkey football. Should be an interesting day for DFS. And if you are in fantasy football leagues, good luck, my friends. I hope you guys get a W. Get a W for the team.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mitch.
Take care, Nolan. Take care, everybody.